Welcome back after the break. Now for the news in detail, we start from India, where the government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. The decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. Home Minister Amit Shah has also moved a parliamentary resolution to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution, which defines Kashmir's status. Earlier, Indian forces arrested prominent political leaders and shut down the village telecom services. Mehbooba Mufti, Umar Abdullah and Sajjad Lone are among those detained. Curfew has been imposed over the entire disputed territory after killing of 10 unarmed youths yesterday. This comes after New Delhi sent around 100,000 additional troops to occupied Kashmir over the past week. Now, we have with us our New Delhi correspondent Neha Punia. Thank you, Neha, for joining us. Now, Neha, the situation seems to be getting aggravating now. The BJP has long talked about scrapping the special constitution status of Kashmir. So why has it acted now?
Multiple reasons for that. One, of course, is the massive mandate they won in the recently held general elections, in which the BJP not only won by a landslide but even improved on its performance in the 2014 elections. And experts are saying that the government has seen that as an expression of the mandate of the rest of the country, that they want the government to go ahead with the promise they had made in their manifesto that there would be a repeal of Article 370 and 35A that gave special powers to the people of Jammu and Kashmir and excluded them from laws that are passed by the federal government here in New Delhi in many ways. And also, it's the timing that's important. This is the first big decision the BJP government has taken after coming to power, and it comes just a few days ahead of India's Independence Day celebrations on August 15. So clearly the BJP trying to send out a very symbolic message that this move will help the people of Kashmir become an integral part of the rest of the Indian mainland.
Right, Neha, we have seen, but there's a question. Why Narendra Modi's hand tipped by President Trump's remarks on his talks about mediating the Kashmir dispute with Pakistan? Why is that?
It's tough to say whether Donald Trump's comments offering to mediate on Kashmir had any role to play, because this is something that the government has spoken of since the very beginning. This has been one of BJP's key election promises, not only in this election but also in the 2014 elections, and something that they had promised to do if they had won a second mandate. So I think in this instance it's essentially just reaching out to their own domestic constituents, those people who had voted for the BJP, mainly people who wanted some sort of intervention, keeping in mind the kind of insurgency the government claims has been rampant in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Yes, the timing is of course interesting, because just a few weeks ago Donald Trump made those comments. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan also urged the international community to put pressure on India, and then this has happened, interestingly giving the BJP government more power than they had just 24 hours ago over the state of Jammu and Kashmir and its people. So the timing is very important, but I don't think the two are linked directly.
Right, Neha, also tell that the BJP does not have a two-third majority in the parliament. So can they make this amendment? And if they can, how can they make this amendment?
That's an interesting question, because the legality of this revocation has been questioned by many. Essentially, the Home Minister stood up in Parliament earlier on Monday and said that the government has revoked Article 370, that the President has signed off on it, and many were questioning how this can happen at a time when the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir and its leadership is under clampdown, and there's a complete blackout as far as the access to information is concerned from Srinagar and other parts of the valley. And to To that, Amit Shah has said that since there has been no government in place in Jammu and Kashmir since 2018, and the state has been under the governor's rule, which essentially means it's been in the indirect rule of the federal government, the power to give consent to this provision lies in the hands of Parliament. And as far as two-thirds majority required for this provision is concerned, we've seen in the last 1 week how the BJP has managed to break the ranks of the opposition, managed to win support from one or two parties here and there, managed to convince certain parties to abstain from voting, essentially bringing down that mark needed for the vote. We're expecting something similar to play out this time as well, because it would make no sense for the BJP to introduce an amendment like this without being 100% certain that it can pass the Parliament's test.
Right, Neha, India has also deployed extra forces and in a very large number, so at the line of control. So should we expect another escalation like in February? Can we expect another escalation?
A lot of the preparations we saw on the ground in the last few days were clearly leading up to this moment. Back then, the government has said that the reason why 10,000 additional troops were sent to the Kashmir Valley last week was because there was a terror threat to the Amarnath pilgrimage. But now it's becoming increasingly clear this was an attempt to try and lay the groundwork to ensure there would be no violence or rioting once this proposition was laid out in India's parliament. And we just got a confirmation as well that the government is planning to send even more troops. About 8,000 central paramilitary troops will be sent in the days ahead, and that clampdown still remains in place in Kashmir. But the question now is, how long can that blackout remain in place? How long can the Indian government keep these leaders, including former chief ministers of Jammu and Kashmir, under house arrest? And how long can this blackout remain in place, ensuring that the people of Kashmir will be given no avenue to protest? That's really the big question.
Right, thank you very much for joining us. That was our new Indus correspondent from New Delhi, Neha Punia. She was updating us on the this current situation in occupied Kashmir, as the government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. Now, for our viewers, just a reminder, the decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. The Home Minister Amit Shah has also moved a parliamentary resolution to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution, which defines Kashmir's status. Earlier, we know that Indian forces arrested prominent political leaders and shut down the village telecom services. And Yasin Malik is also under arrest and with very ill health. And Mehbooba Mufti, Umar Abdullah and Sajad Lone are also detained. Curfew has been imposed over the entire dispute. Now, to talk more on this, we are joined from Islamabad by Tasneem Aslam, a former special secretary at Pakistan's Foreign Office. Thank you, ma'am, Tasneem Aslam, for joining us. So, ma'am, India's move to change the status of occupied Kashmir is unprecedented. So, how do you expect Pakistan to react?
Yes, it is unprecedented. It's illegal. It's against the UN Security Council resolution and international law, but it is not unexpected because this was in the BJP manifesto, and now that Mr. Modi's party has majority, it was only a matter of time before they started it. The worst the result of this could be what happens when this motion gets through and two articles are repealed. Kashmiris are not going to take it lying down, and despite the unprecedented level of troops and atrocities and brutalities and crackdown that is taking place right now, no media outlets is allowed there, no human rights organizations are there, and the foreign tourists have been thrown out. So obviously a lot is happening and a lot is going to happen. Even those Kashmiris who were part of the Indian political system, Mehbooba Mufti, Umar Abdullah, who believed in Indian democracy, erroneously of course, they are under house arrest and they cannot speak out. This and when the Kashmir erupts again and there is bloodshed, how is the international community going to react? We see that Indian action in the parliament and crackdown in Kashmir is also accompanied by cross-border, cross-LOC adventure, in the sense that they have used very heavy artillery and they have killed civilians on this side. So this could lead to an all-out conflict between Pakistan and India. And don't forget that the two countries are nuclear weapon states. And once the conflict starts, then you don't know where it will go, where it will end. And we have been telling the world for years, for decades, that the fact that Pakistan and India are nuclear weapon states, and they have this long festering dispute over which they have fought wars, if there is a conflict, it will have very grave consequences, not just for this region, for the entire world. And right under the nose of the United Nations Security Council, India is openly violating its resolutions. India has taken a leaf out of Israel's book, and it is doing exactly what Israel has done. What we now have to see whether the world treats India the same way it has treated Israel, with impunity and complete immunity. It is not likely. The 54-member OIC has already spoken out. They have expressed grave concern. They have condemned Indian actions. And then we have already approached the UN Security Council, written a letter. The Foreign Minister has written a letter to its president, to the President of UN General Assembly, and also to the UN Secretary General. You know that Human Rights Council has already issued a very examining report on India's human rights violations in Kashmir. So this is already on the international agenda. We are seeing President Trump. Obviously, Pakistan would be reaching out to the global leaders, particularly the leadership of the Permanent Five, to stop India from doing what it is doing. This is not acceptable to the Kashmiris. It is not acceptable to Pakistan, which is the party to this dispute. And this should not be acceptable to the international community because this violates the verdict of the international community, of the UN Security Council, which is a primary institution for maintaining international peace and security.
Right, ma'am. Also, India's move follows the offer made by US President Donald Trump to mediate in the Kashmir dispute. So how will the international community react to this unilateral move by India?
If we talk about international law, if we talk about the UN Security Council resolutions and the principles of the UN Charter, international community should not accept it. They ought not accept it. But we see that the international community is particularly the big powers are moved by their political interests, their geopolitical agendas. This is the reason that India has gone so far. As I mentioned, Israel's case, there are Security Council resolutions. The Palestine question is on the UN Security Council agenda. General Assembly adopts resolutions year after year. Yet Israel has this impunity to demolish Palestinian homes and throw them out and build settlements. So obviously we are aware of, we are conscious of the fact that the international community, particularly big powers, are moved by. But we have seen that recently President Trump, during the Prime Minister's visit and subsequently also, he reiterated his offer for mediation and arbitration on the Kashmir dispute, which obviously did not go down well, although the Indian Prime Minister never denied that he had taken it up with President Trump. But we also to keep in mind that it is a very sensitive time for Afghanistan. While Pakistan's energy was focused on helping the U.S. find an honorable exit out of Afghanistan, helping with the reconciliation process, this is how India is. Obviously, India is also upset with the developments in Afghanistan. But if the U.S. wants Pakistan's wholehearted focus on peace and reconciliation of Afghanistan, it would have to stop India from doing what it is doing and also take every possible step to avert the bloodshed that is likely to ensue from this irrational step by India, illegal step.
About some possible, you have already talked about a possible escalation between Pakistan and India. So, ma'am, what are the chances of a military escalation? How many, what percentage of chances, or what is the amount of chances that we can see of a possible escalation between the two countries?
Hello, are you talking to me?
Yes, ma'am, I'm still talking to you.
Yes, as I said that we have already had one episode of escalation in February where India, without any rhyme or reason, violated our airspace and dropped some bombs in a forest, and Pakistan retaliated. There was a very real chance of escalation and a full-blown out conflict. But it did not happen, mercifully. But if India's irrational behavior continues and the international community does not step in to stop India, then the risk of escalation and the conflict breaking out between Pakistan and India is an immediate danger.
Right, ma'am. Tasneem Aslam's former Special Secretary Foreign Affairs from Islamabad, for joining us in Indus News and giving us your time. Now, ma'am was talking about the possible escalation between Pakistan and India, and there is great chances of a possible escalation due to the current situation in occupied Kashmir. And she also talked about Donald Trump's remarks of mediation, and it seems to be have got President Prime Minister Modi's mood in the. But it seems that India is not going to back out of the situation, and it is going to worse. Now, just to remind our viewers, the government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. Now, for our viewers, this is a reminder. The decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. Home Minister Amit Shah has also moved a parliamentary resolution to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution. Just a reminder, Home Minister Amit Shah has also moved a parliamentary resolution to revoke the Article 370 of the Constitution, which defines Kashmir's status. Earlier, Indian forces have arrested prominent political leaders and shut down the valley's telecom services also, with Yasin Malik in jail. Mehbooba Mufti, Umar Abdullah and Sajad Lone are among those detained. And curfew has been imposed over the entire disputed territory after killing of 10 unarmed youth yesterday. Now, viewers, this comes after New Delhi sent around 100,000 additional troops to occupied Kashmir over the past week. Now, the current situation in occupied Kashmir is escalating, and there are great chances of a potential escalation between Pakistan and India. And the curfew has been imposed over the entire disputed territory after killing of 10 unarmed youths yesterday. Mobile internet services are switched off, and people in occupied Kashmir have started to to store food, and the situation seems to be escalating, and as the additional troops have been also sent to India. Now, just to remind you, the government of India has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory, and the decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. This will be bringing you breaking news. The government of India has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. The decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory, and the situation in occupied Kashmir seems to be getting out of hand of India, and India might do something mad in there. So the government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory, and the decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. Home Minister Amit Shah has also moved a parliamentary resolution to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution, which defines Kashmir's status. Earlier, Indian forces arrested prominent political leaders and shut down the village telecom services. Mehbooba Mufti, Umar Abdullah and Sajjad Lone are among those detained. As you can see the live images on the screen, the current images from the Indian Parliament, where the resolution has been presented, and Mehbooba Mufti, Umar Abdullah and Sajjad Lone are detained currently in occupied Kashmir, with Yasin Malik arrested, and the reports are that Yasin Malik's health is deteriorating and the Indian forces are not providing him immediate health or medical services. Just to remind you, the government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. And the decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. We have news that Home Minister Amit Shah, just a reminder, has moved a parliamentary resolution to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution, which defines Kashmir's status, and it's against the Kashmiri people and the Kashmiri struggle for freedom. Earlier, we know that Indian forces have arrested prominent political leaders and shut down the village telecom services. And with Yasin Malik in jail, Mehbooba Mufti, Umar Abdullah and Sajjad Lone are among those detained. Curfew has been imposed over the entire disputed territory after the killing of 10 unarmed youths yesterday. And this comes after New Delhi sent around 100,000 additional troops to occupy Kashmir. Earlier, we were talking to Tasneem Asif, that she was former Secretary Foreign Affairs from Islamabad, and she talked about how this situation could possibly escalate. So she also said that basically India does not want to see peace in Afghanistan, and India does not want the United States Army to leave Afghanistan. And she was not satisfied with the international response as of now, but she said there is a great chances of a possible escalation or a full conflict between the two nations. Now, just to remind you, for the viewers who have just tuned into Indus News, the government of India has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. Now, just for those who have just tuned in to Indus News, we're bringing you breaking news. The government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. The decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. We're bringing you breaking news. The government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. And the decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. Now, viewers, also Home Minister Amit Shah has moved a parliamentary resolution to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution, which defines Kashmir's status. Now, for all those viewers who've just tuned into Indus News, we're bringing you breaking news. The government of India has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. The decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. We also have news that Home Minister Amit Shah has also moved a parliamentary resolution to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution, which defines Kashmir's special status. Now, India is trying to revoke Kashmir's special status, which will allow Indians to buy property, purchase property, and start moving there and colonize. Now we have with us Chairman Kashmir Institute, Mr. Altaf with us. Mr. Altaf, thank you for your time. The government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. Sir, your words on this?
Yeah, Indian government was planning this. They had a plan to do this since a long time. Initially, they had petitioned in Supreme Court of India to an NGO to scrap this article. But after failing from there, the BJP government was in haste to change the demography in the state before the coming elections in the state assembly in Indian-occupied Kashmir. So the presidential decree which they have introduced to scrap the Article 35A of the Indian Constitution, this is only to change the demographics of the state of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and thereby installing the government led by BJP and to settle the Indian citizens who are non-state subjects and cannot have the voting rights or land rights in Indian occupied Kashmir by virtue of 92 years old law in Kashmir. So this is an attack on the identity of Kashmir. This is attack on the whole society of Kashmir by the Indian state, and the people of Kashmir will resist this. But at this, our struggle in Kashmir, the people who struggle in Kashmir against the Indian rule was not for the Article 35A. It's based on the UN Security Council resolutions calling for the right celebration in Indian occupied Kashmir, for the people of Jammu and Kashmir to decide their political future. So that struggle will continue. Today, when this order has been issued, presidential decree has been issued, we see the whole state of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been put, looks like a cage. Each and everybody is in like home, and not only the leaders, not only the activists, but the whole population of Kashmir is besieged. And along with that, all lines of communication have been cut. So people in Indian occupied Kashmir at this point of time don't know what is happening there. And at the same time, the escalation of the Indian forces on the borders, on this line of control, is also a matter of concern. So at this point of time, it's the responsibility, I think, as the people of Kashmir cannot move, they don't have any lines of communication. The responsibility lies on the state of Pakistan, on the Foreign Ministry of Pakistan, to urge for a UN Security Council session and to sensitize the international community about the happenings in the region.
Right, Mr. Altaf, do you also see that India, the Prime Minister Modi, was obviously not happy with Donald Trump's remarks that Modi requested Donald Trump to mediate between Pakistan and India for the Kashmir dispute? And so, first of all, on that, I want your words on this. And also, do you see that India is unhappy with the peace process going on in Afghanistan and Pakistan being pushed to number one?
Yeah, this is quite evident. As the peace process in Afghanistan started, India saw its role marginalized in Afghanistan. That did not make India happy. India tried to sabotage this peace process. One of the major the points of escalation on the borders, on the line of control, is to divert the attention of Pakistan to this, and so that they could derail the peace process in Afghanistan. That's of course there. And along with that, you rightly pointed out that the Indians are never happy with the third-party intervention, though they always seek third-party intervention when they are under pressure. When we see during Pulwama happenings, when that happened in February, India ran all over the world to ask the world to intervene. and at that time they needed the international intervention. But when it comes to Kashmir, when it comes to negotiate on Kashmir, India never wants any third-party intervention. So in order to give a message to the United States also to the whole international community that is like a big boss in the region, they can dictate the terms, and they have started dictating the terms in the region, and thereby they want to sabotage also the Afghan peace process.
So the BJP, sir, has long talked about scrapping the special constitutional status of Kashmir. So why has it acted now?
Total majority in the Indian Parliament. This was one. The second thing is that they see that they can grab the state legislature in occupied Kashmir by putting all the leaders. Now the Indian media and Indian machinery has started naming and shaming all those leaders who previously were collaborators with the Indian rule in Kashmir. See Mahbub Mufti, Farooq Abdullah, Sajjad Khan and others. All of them are now being named and shamed by the Indian media, and thereby putting them under pressure, and also making them accountable of what they have done over the years during the rule in Kashmir. And along with that, they want to hold the elections in the near future. Before that, they will also go for the delimitation of the assembly segments in the state, and thereby want to have the absolute majority in the state legislature in order that this presidential decree, so the constitution is to be approved by the state legislature. So they thought it opportune, and the one thing which was quite surprising, why did they suspend the Yatra? Why did they send the tourists back and all that in order to galvanize vote back at home that they have that in Kashmir?
Right, sir. Mr. Altaf, the Home Minister, we have news that Home Minister Amit Shah he's moved a resolution to revoke the Article 370 of the Constitution, obviously, which defines Kashmir's status. So, do you see any hope of this Amit Shah's resolution being approved and Article 370 being revoked?
Yeah, you see, they have the majority in the Parliament, so they can do it in the Parliament, they can do it in the Rajya Sabha, as they have the numbers over here. But looking at the whole constitutional process, they have to get this approved by the state legislature. But as long as the state legislature is not there timely, they will the presidential rule there. So they will enact this law in region of Kashmir. Along with that, like I said, they want to do the distribution of the assembly segments and give more seats to the Jammu province, thereby get more Hindu legislators in the state assembly, and thereby they can adopt this law fully. And that is the effect what they want to do.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Altaf Hussain, for joining us. You are Chairman, Kashmir Institute, and thank you very much for your views. And so, just to remind our viewers, the government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. And the decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. The Home Minister Amit Shah had moved a resolution to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution, which defines Kashmir's status. And we know that earlier Indian forces arrested prominent political leaders and shut down the valley's telecom services. With Yasin Malik in jail with his deteriorating health, Indian forces have failed to provide him medical assistance. And with the prominent Kashmiri leaders, Mahbooba Mufti, Umar Abdullah and Sajjad Lone are detained. Curfew. We have with us Defense Analyst General Wahid Arshad. Please, thank you very much for joining us, sir. The government has rushed through the presidential decree. So what do you see the future of occupied Kashmir in the current scenario?
Well, I think the India today, chaired by the Prime Minister, done the right thing. I think there is across the political spectrum in Pakistan, there is total support for supporting the Kashmiri freedom struggle in terms of its moral, political and diplomatic support, and we have been doing it all along. And I think the the statement by the government is a good statement that we'll never let the Kashmiris down. So I think it's the international community which has now got to play some role in resolving this 70-year-old conflict.
And so what do you think there are chances of a full-scale conflict between Pakistan and India?
My take is I don't think Indians are that stupid to do that. They'll create disturbances along the line of control, blame Pakistan for it, use that to ploy for the upcoming General Assembly session as they do every year, and also blame Pakistan for whatever is happening in Kashmir to take that moral high ground which they don't have actually at the moment. So I don't think they're going to go to war on this issue. They're going to lose out on that. They already had that bloody nose on the 27th of February. And I don't think they're in a position to, to do that again.
Right, so we also have reports that in India, journalists are not allowed to talk about this topic. And so basically, what is India trying to prove to the international community, to the international world? Obviously, the BJP agenda, everyone knows about the BJP agenda, and that is anti-Muslim. We have seen recent news videos of Indian BJP party members murdering Muslims, innocent Muslims. So what is India trying to prove here?
First, I think the Indians are under pressure because of the United States' two statements by the president to offer for mediation. I think since Modi had spoken to the Prime Minister, he doesn't want to agree on that, and he's got a lot of flack domestically, so he wants to divert attention from that. Second, they're losing out on whatever in the regional security perspective, whatever is happening in Afghanistan, so they're going to lose their strategic interests there. But more than that, I think it is the domestic political scenario in India which the BJP government is trying to take advantage of. And, there have been 44 lynchings of Muslims since last 1 year. And it's not something which can be, the international community should just forget about it. I mean, that is one of the reasons why the BJP government is doing whatever they are doing in Kashmir to actually try and convince the international community that the problem in Kashmir lies is because of Pakistan, not because of their own massive human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. I mean, this is all domestic politics of India.
Right, so thank you very much for joining us. Do stay online with us. It is unclear, viewers, what India is trying to do here with that amount of bloodshed and killing innocent Kashmiris and innocent Muslims, not just Muslims, innocent minorities inside India, lynching them, killing them, murdering them, and not giving them their rights as an equal citizen of India. So the motives of Prime Minister Modi are still unclear. We had seen these motives in his earlier government, and this is Modi who has returned with a majority this time. But the motives behind Modi's policies is unclear. And the international response to this issue, to the lynching of innocent minorities inside India, is also unsatisfactory. But just to remind our viewers that we are bringing you breaking news, the government has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir special status as a disputed territory, and the decree was issued hours after Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. Now, this is also important that India does not seem to be wanting peace in Afghanistan, and he wants to sabotage that process. And India basically does not like President Trump asking Pakistan as an important ally to help United States get its forces out of Afghanistan. And this thing is just not being digested by India. So India is trying to revoke and to escalate the situation inside Kashmir, to remove the intelligence and from the interest and Pakistan side of Afghanistan peace process. But the motives of India are still unclear. Modi is trying to do a genocide inside Kashmir the way he has been doing inside India itself against the Indian minorities, be it Christians, be it Muslims, be it any lower caste Hindus too. So just a reminder to our viewers who've just tuned into Indus News, we're bringing you breaking news. The government of India, the government of Prime Minister Modi, has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. The BJP government of India, led by Prime Minister Modi, has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. Our viewers, the decree was also issued hours after the Indian occupation forces locked down the occupied territory. Well, that's all for now. We will keep you updated on the situation with our live transmission that is going to start at 1:30 p.m. That's all from now from Indus News. Stay tuned for more updates.